when they can't make sumo. You get your friends together and you fake some sumo. Hey, 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 hey. It's the Not-So Basho. Not-So Basho, Basho, yeah. Not-So Basho. Not-So Basho, yeah.
Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown. This is Ryan. This is Jake.
This is Fleric.
And this is Mac.
And this is our long-awaited explanation of how we put together the Basho simulation, which we turned off just about a week ago. How do you guys feel after that simulation is done and over?
Unplugged.
Yeah, it feels pretty good to be out of the Matrix. Even though it was cool to have all the special powers and such, but
I felt like Keanu Reeves. It was amazing.
Yeah, my favorite part was, getting out of that little carpeted coffins that we had, that we were plugged into the machine. It was very sweaty in there for a month, but I think I feel much better having showered.
I'm sure your wife appreciates it.
Me showering? Yes, usually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I am going to be the one rambling most of this episode, so I'm going to give a warning right now. This is going to be dry AF. There's a lot of theory that we're going to be talking through, and I legit have like a sheet of paper with formulas written on it that I'm going to be going through. So like that's how bad it is. This is a math class, so fair
There's
warning.
the skip button. No one would blame you. There's the skip button right there.
Skip button right over there.
I would think poorly of every single person who skips over this episode, as we put a lot of time and effort into putting this simulation together. And if you're just going to skip over all of our hard work and dismiss it like it was nothing, like I don't want you listening to this podcast. Like, who do you think you are?
Yeah, go to hell, hypothetical listener. Although even just talking about how dry this episode is going to be has put Fleric to sleep.
Indeed.
Huh? What's going on?
Wait, what?
You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Grand Sumo. Oh,
no, it hasn't happened yet.
No, you fool.
Oh, shit.
Oh, man. Okay, so how about we do the quick 1-minute version of what went into this and how we operated, how we simulated this, and then we will go into each topic in depth. I phrase it like a question, but I'm telling you what we're doing.
All right, I'll get started. So in the 1750s, they officially started holding bashos and had sumo wrestlers. I thought you guys were going to stop me.
No, keep going.
No, I'm timing you. You've got 1 minute. Keep going.
Yeah. You got Jake, 30 seconds left to get to.
Indeed, that's right. Hey, I got the clock here. We're going.
And then there's over 250 years of history, and then they
15.
canceled one of the tournaments, and then we decided to put a tournament together by
10.
math. And that math was hard, and we're going to go
5.
through it a lot more now in the coming time.
Thank you very much.
Attaboy, Ryan. This is why we keep you around. This is literally the reason.
I don't even know that we need to record the rest of this. I feel like that captured everything.
Hey, I put 15 minutes into this outline earlier today, and so help me, I will get credit for it, and we will put an episode together based on it.
Fine.
So the brief version of this, and Mac, I know you're going to time me, but please don't bother telling me what the time is at. So we started
Set a timer. He loves those.
We started with the existing Bansuke. The Bansuke for the hypothetical May tournament was released on schedule anyways, so we just used those rankings, obviously. Ryan, in particular, took the burden of putting together the actual Torikumi for how people were going to be matched up over the course of the tournament. We're going to elaborate on the specifics of that later, but Ryan did a lot of research in the trends and how matching people up tends to go over the course of the tournament. And for each day of the tournament, we simulated by doing a whole bunch of math to determine what's the percentage chance for each guy to win. And then we roll dice to determine who actually did win that match. So rolling dice means that we were doing one simulation based on a percentage. You may say something like, yeah, why didn't you write a program to do 10,000 simulations of each match or something like that? Like when we write the code, basically we're outputting, maybe it says 55% chance that this guy will win. If we run a bajillion simulations, it'll just be, oh, we learned that 55% of the time this guy wins according to the formulas that are now circular logic. So we didn't do that. We just rolled the dice one time per match to determine who wins. Based on some other rolls, we determined what happened after that match. Did somebody get injured? How big a victory was it? Etc. And when we get through all the matches for a day, we deal with those results, and back to the top, we go to the next day, and we go through that Torikumi the same way. So, Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you put together the matches, how you developed each day's Torikumi, because that was one of the things that I know took the most work, the most time, because you had to do another day of Torikumi every single day that we simulated.
Yeah, so in the 1750s is when
Okay,
Sumo
skip ahead a couple years.
Fast forward.
And then in
1752.
May of 2020, when we were putting the simulation together. Yeah, so, I mean, you always start off with 2 days of a Torikumi when a tournament starts off, and then pretty much we do 1 day of matches, and then I would do day 3 of the Torikumi, because I would know by the end of day 1 if anybody's going to be pulling out, so I would have that advanced knowledge to know, so I could do it basically 2 days in advance. And I found a couple of different trends as I looked through old Torikumi. So old Torikumi that I used as just like a starting point. Hatsu 2020, because they were 8 people in the Sanyaku for this Basho, the same as it will be for the upcoming Nagoya Basho. I also kind of looked at Natsu of 2019. And that was when Asanoyama won his Yusho. So I was kind of looking at that when Ishiura was leading, mostly to see when he would start facing off against the Sanyaku Rikishi, which turned out was a little bit later than I thought it was. And then I also looked at Hatsu of 2019, and that's when Tamawashi won the Yusho. And that's because it is remarkably similar to the situation that we had with Mitakayumi winning the Yusho, and just trying to find out the matches that happened then, which lower ranked Rikishi to come up and face Mitakayumi on the final day, stuff like that. So I kind of used those as an initial baseline, and then just kind of found some of the patterns that show up in the Torikumi creation. So like for the Yokozuna on the east side, for like Hakuho, he faces everybody in order for the most part. So he starts with Komosubi West, and then he faces Maegashira 1 East, Maegashira 1 West in order through Maegashira 4 West. And then after he's faced all of them, then it'll switch to the rest of the Sanyaku people, and he will face Komosubi East, and then Sekiwake West, Sekiwake East, up through that final day matchup with what would hopefully be a healthy Yokozuna. Now, any injuries can throw that off, but that was kind of the baseline to start off each day was, okay, Hakuho is going down the ledger. Who is he facing? Then you go and look at the Sanyaku ranks, and they are going to be facing like the next highest person that is available for them. And an interesting thing that I found when creating the Bansuke or the Torikumi is like, at least in this 8-person format, the Komosubi East and West would switch each day as to who was like the bottom guy in the Sanyaku ranks, and then who would kind of act as like a Maegashira and who they're going to be going up against. So like day 1, you would have Hakuho face the Komosubi West, and then you would have the Kakuryu, he would face the next highest available person that wasn't in the Sanyaku ranks, so that'd be Maegashira 1 East. And then you just go through the Sanyaku ranks like that, having them face off the next available person. And so once you've figured out everybody that's in the Joy, all of their matchups, then you just kind of work down through the ranks and who is their next highest available person that they can face. And so just do that every day. It gets a little bit tricky as you get towards the bottom of the Bansuke because you're kind of eliminating possible matchups. And so it doesn't always work as you go through further into the Bond. There's just a lot of stuff you have to take into consideration. I could go on for quite a while.
Especially when there's a lot of Kotos that kind of just hang out around the bottom. And they can't face each other because they're from the same Heya.
Yeah, exactly. So
that just probably makes stuff super complicated.
Yeah, it did. And so we actually had a nice spreadsheet to help me keep track of everything. We had a head-to-head document where we had each Rikshi's name along the x-axis and the y-axis. And then we would have like just a black dot if it was where they would like line up with somebody in their stable, so that I know, okay, I can't have a matchup between like Ishiura and Enho. Those two can't face off. And then I would also fill in a black dot for every matchup that I did for the previous day. So after I did the day one Torikumi, do a black dot for all those matchups, so I know going forward, all right, these two guys can't face off again unless it's in a playoff situation. So that helped me out greatly. But yeah, it was definitely the bottom of the Torikumi that gave me the most difficulty, because all the Kotos were at the bottom. And then
do you have a Rikshi you now hate a lot more because of this? Just simply because he's hard to match up?
Is it
Gotta be one of the
Kotoyuki?
Kotos.
Kotoyuki. Maybe Kotoyuki?
It was. It actually ended up being like Chiyomaru.
Hey, not my
dare you.
boy.
Because like he was right at the sweet spot where like if I did the math of like, okay, this person faced the next highest ranked Rikshi available for him to fight, a lot of time it would get like nice and wrapped up at Maegashira like 14, and then like you would have, okay, now all my Maegashira 15, 16, and 17, these guys don't have a match, but they've already fought each other. And so then I had to like go back up through my matches to kind of reorder everything. And so like Chiyomaru was in that area, like Nishikigi, I guess, yeah, like Kotoeko, they were in that area. So all of those guys at the bottom of the Bansuke suck, and I hope they go down to Juryo in the next Basho.
Oh, well, okay. Some of them.
Yeah.
Speaking of Juryo, though, sorry, go ahead, Claire.
I bet you have some appreciation for the people who actually make the Torikumi every single day. They probably have the exact same frustrations. Like, dang you, Chiyomaru.
What do we do with him? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely have more respect for them. I believe that they probably have some sort of formula to figure out like when you have to skip. Like when I have like a Maegashira 10 East and his next highest available person that he can face is Maegashira 13 East, but he can't face that guy because that Maegashira 13 East needs to face somebody lower ranked because all their other matchups have already been taken. I'm sure they have that figured out. But yeah, definitely it's very difficult to do, and it did cause quite a bit of frustration between a couple of days. I think days like 8, 9, and 10 were probably the hardest for me because that's when you're still going pretty much by rank who you're facing, and there were just so many matchups that were already taken. It was just so hard to figure out, okay, if I place this guy against this guy, that leaves this dude available to face this guy, but he's already fought that guy, so now I need to go back further up and move these matchups around to open up other possibilities. Yeah, it got bad. I'm trying to think if there's any... Oh, and so the other main thing that I want to talk about with the Torikumis is like days 1 through 10, it was based virtually entirely on your rank facing the next highest ranked guy that you have available to face. And then days 11 through 15, that's when we started doing it more based on record. And so I'd still do it based on rank, but I'd have it like, okay, who's the next highest guy that you haven't fought already, but has a similar record to you? And that just kind of gets more and more severe as the further days you go along. So maybe like on day 11, I'd have somebody that was 5-5 face somebody that was like 3-7 or 7-3, 2 matchup difference. But then once you're at day 15, it's like, okay, 7-7 versus 7-7, 10-3 versus 10-3, and stuff like that. Just
you need to maximize that drama.
Yeah, Ryan, I know for you, one of the things that we joke about a lot is that you in particular always run through your head as how many people can we wedge into a playoff? You know,
every single Basho.
Yes. And I had to fight those instincts because as a matchmaker, I had to try to eliminate as many people from the Yusho race as possible when we were at like days 12, 13, and 14, and 15, which hurt me to my core. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, because I know like you're the one who wants the biggest playoffs. I mean, we all want weird stuff like that happening, of course, but like I know you in particular want it more than anyone. So yeah, that must have been difficult. But at the same time, the whole point of the matchmaking is to kind of avoid that. Put the 7 and 7s against each other. On days 12 through 14, put the guys that are in the lead against each other, so that they probably are going to weed out a couple people from a potential playoff. But yeah, that I know that was difficult, and I know that was it was one of the more difficult things that we had to do during the actual execution of the Basho, because the results of a day are going to impact the matchups of the day 2 days ahead.
Yeah, so days 11 through 15, I couldn't do 2 days ahead because I needed, like you said, I needed to know the results of that day before I could do the next day's matchups. And so I feel like I did a pretty good job of putting it together realistically. I know the guys at Tachi kind of making sure we got realism in the results was very important to them, and they really didn't have any notes for like the matches that we were putting together. They seemed to all have a pretty good idea that, yeah, these are the matches that would happen. This seems realistic. So I was very happy with that. And then I also need to thank Fleric for setting up some sort of Excel spreadsheet voodoo where he could double check after I had a day's matchups done. It's like, nope, you have Tamawashi on here 3 times. And
as much as I would want that, that's doesn't happen often.
Can he break his own elbow?
Ooh, a self-kotanage, the rarest of techniques.
But yeah, I could go a lot deeper into what it takes to put together the Torikumi and the different trends and stuff, but I'll cap it at that, which is probably already far more than what was needed.
Yeah.
Certainly far more than what was wanted. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, like, it was definitely like a lot of the stuff we could do beforehand, like with our pre-prep, like making sure the math and stuff. But this was something you had to do like day by day each day. Yeah. So, and a lot of that fell onto you, Ryan, because like a lot of this is really complicated. And a lot of that stuff just kind of went over my head with you just kind of explaining it. So like it was definitely appreciated that you took that part upon it, because it was a tough thing to do, and I think the results came out pretty well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was saying, like during execution, that was the hardest part. Like we had plenty of time ahead of the tournament to like get our formulas and our automation and stuff like that going. But yeah, like once we started, basically the only things that were holding us back were the amount of time it takes Google Sheets to do some calculation, and then Ryan, who had to manually do the middle step because there's no way to really automate that certainly not with our level of programming intelligence. By any
and we
means.
could, if we had decided, okay, this simulation, nobody gets hurt, I could have easily done like days 1 through 10, 1 through 11, and then just saved like the final 4 days for the matchups. But
sure,
because we had injuries, I didn't know who was going to be available on a daily basis, which is why we had to do it on a day-by-day basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tamawashi exists in the simulation. So,
and he did rear his ugly head by injuring Ikioi on day 1.
His hideous, ugly, horrifying head.
Oh my goodness! I think that was one of my favorite parts. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about it later, but Ikioi just getting the crap beat out of him was.
I think we'll talk about.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that with like the Genki system and how we determine that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Exactly. And we're getting, so the next section that I wanted to talk about was once we have the matchmaking, which like we said, that was the hardest part once we started. Everything from here on out could have been automated, but like I also mentioned, the calculation speed of Google Sheets was one of the other biggest hangups that we ran into. Because at its heart, the way that we did each match, Ryan provides who's matching up against who. And then from there, we have to determine what is the % win chance of wrestler A and wrestler B. And once we have that percentage, we roll the dice to see who actually wins, right? So that percentage is the really key math thing that we had to do. And we started with our ELO calculation, that the Sumo power rankings that we run for every tournament, that I blather on about in our recap episodes now and then, that kind of deal. So a quick overview a moderately lengthed overview of our ELO system.
There you go.
That's more accurate.
Jake,
effectively,
I got this here if we're doing moderate. So in the 1940s and 50s is when like the sixth Basho structure fully began to take form.
There was
Well,
this one guy in chess who wanted to make a better ranking.
yeah, bonus points for Fleric for remembering this has something to do with chess. Yes.
A sumo wrestler played chess with a chess grand champion.
Yes,
And then he
exactly.
Kotanaga'd him.
Yes,
And
and he was
thus,
inspired.
sumo elo ratings were born. So yeah, Ryan brought it up that that was, we a few decades ago we established the Yusho system and the number of tournaments that are held a year, and the next major milestone in sumo history is in the beginning of 2017 when an Iowan math nerd decided to create elo rankings for sumo wrestling.
Wait, hang on. Did you guys just hear that? Jake classified
Oh,
himself as
no!
an Iowan. Oh, baby!
We
A
got
Minnesotan.
One of
Minnesotan
us.
nerd
One
who
of
has been
us.
trapped
One
in
of
Iowa.
us.
One of us.
A Minnesotan nerd who has been trapped in Iowa for 10 years.
And somehow
Due to
hasn't moved away despite no longer being in college for a decade.
Yeah, the great tragedy of marrying an Iowan woman and finding an Iowan job has led me to continue my purgatory here indefinitely.
Thank you, Katie.
She can probably hear me from the living room. I'm just going to keep moving here. So a Minnesotan nerd who is trapped in Iowa created an ELO system. So ELO, like as Fleric got bonus points for, he remembered that ELO is started in chess. So it's a guy whose last name was Elo, E-L-O. And he created this rating system. It's a zero-sum point system, meaning that everybody has some score that is relative to their skill level or is supposed to approximate their skill level. And by zero-sum, I mean that there is a set number of points out there. When you beat somebody, you steal some of their points. They lose X points and you gain X points. And no points are really created or lost in that interaction. It's just you steal some of their points. And the number of points that you steal is based on the estimated win percentage based on a formula. So this formula says I get, this formula says I get some percentage of a chance that I'm going to win. And the more unlikely it is for me to win, the more points I can take from that person when I do win. So the difference in your ratings and a K factor, if you ever look this up, if you look up like what the actual formulas are online, the main formula that we're dealing with is if I beat you, I steal this number of points. And this number of points is based on what is the actual result, what is the expected result, and what's the difference between them. So like, let's say that the expected result was me getting a 45% win chance or something like that. So I'm a slight underdog. But the actual result is I win. That's a 1 probability, basically. So a 1 minus 45% gives you 55%, for example. And a K factor of 20, for example. I would gain 55% times 20, that many total ELO points transfer from my opponent's score to my score. As you can see, the greater the difference, the greater the number of points stolen. And that expected win percentage is based on, again, the difference in the scores between the two competitors and a scaling factor. The scaling factor and the aforementioned K factor, these are things that are kind of arbitrary, but also calculated. When I first started our system, I kind of picked arbitrary values. I did a year's worth of data, and then I played around with it to see if I could get values of K and S, the scaling factor, just to try and narrow it down, like see if I can get win percentages that are more accurate.
Yeah, because you started this like 2 years ago, didn't you?
Beginning of 2017. So
Yeah.
I have three years and 2 bashos. So I have 3 1/3 years of data. At the beginning, yes, it was arbitrary, but over those 3 1/3 years, we've kind of dialed into a better system. The more time that passes, the better the system is going to accurately represent the win percentage and the proper scaling factors and things like that of like where the numbers actually are in reality. What percentage chance does Okinoumi actually have of beating Hakuho? We know that it's very low, but where is it?
These are things that keep Jake up at night.
Yes.
Literally. So we start with this ELO win percentage, and based on the score of wrestler A and wrestler B, that gives us some percentage chance that we expect each guy to win, right? That makes sense. But we wanted to expand on this. We feel like there's more things that go into it than obviously a guy who just got promoted to Sekiwake is probably going to have a better ELO score than a guy at Maegashira 3. However, what if there's like a huge disparity in their head-to-head history? That means that somebody's probably got somebody's got somebody else's number. Hakuho versus Okinoumi, for example. That's 22-1 all time. So that should be a factor too, right? Even if Okinoumi's on a hot streak and Hakuho is having a middling tournament, you'd still expect Hakuho to have a pretty solid chance against Okinoumi, right? And not just because he's Okinoumi. But we factor in this head-to-head score. I'll give you the numbers that are going to put everyone to sleep, and then we'll talk about why we did it the way we did. So basically,
I'm prepared.
We have our ELO win percentage, right? Let's say our ELO win percentage is some number, but we want to combine it with a head-to-head score. The more times that people have matched up in the past, the more important this head-to-head score should be. So when Hakuho and Okinoumi have faced off 23 times, that is a good indicator of how their future matchups are going to be, because it's already happened 23 times and Hakuho won 22 of them. That's a big deal. So basically we said that for every time they have faced off in the past, the weight of their head-to-head history will be increased. So if the guys are meeting first time, there's no head-to-head history, obviously that means nothing. If it's 1-0 in head-to-head history, obviously the head-to-head history is 100% in favor of that guy, right? But we only weighted that at 5% of the total calculation. For every matchup that they have had in the past, the weight of the head-to-head history increases by 5%, up to a cap of 75%, because it would get ridiculous for some of the guys that have matched off a million times. We wanted ELO to still matter, so we capped it at 75%. After 15 matches, your head-to-head is weighted as heavily as it can be. That head-to-head percentage is combined with the ELO percentage by that certain weight to come up with our final win percentage estimation for a given match. And this part was done all automatically and rather slowly, because Google Sheets had to do a number of calculations for every single time that we changed anything, and that was kind of a pain in the butt. So we found ways to automate it better as we went along. But those are the two factors that go into calculating this final win percentage between each guy. But we also felt like that wasn't enough. So we added our trademarked Genki system.
TM.
TM. Yes, that's legal. If you use the word Genki outside of this podcast, we will sue you.
Yeah.
Copyright Grand Sumo Breakdown 2020.
Yes, exactly.
LLC.
So the Genki system is kind of we wanted something in there as kind of something to add a little bit of volatility. We wanted something where if somebody's on a hot streak, it's more likely for that hot streak to continue. So we could have done this by screwing around with our ELO system constants, the S and the K value that I mentioned before. But rather than that, what we added a new system that you have a certain Genki score. And for every point of Genki that you gain, you get a 1% boost to your ELO score, which all other things considered equal, that would be maybe a 3 to 5% change in your win percentage chance. So somebody with a bunch of Genki, that's going to build up. Somebody with Genki. Exactly.
Correct.
Somebody with very low Genki, Ikioi, it's going to be a big penalty to his ELO. So
you
his
say
ELO
that.
score, Yeah. We'll get into the injuries later for sure. But like for this Genki system, this final factor in our win percentage calculator, a point of Genki, which, everybody hovered between like -4 and +4, other than a few very select and very wide outliers. So yeah, it's a couple percentage boost basically. But all this comes together into one final win percentage. So wrestler A versus wrestler B, it's gonna take all these things into account and spit out one number. And that one number is going to be between 0 and 100. And it's a decimal of some sort. And let's say it comes out to like 65.3 or something like that. Our next step, where the automation ends and the human factor comes back into it, we roll a die to see who wins that match. So this was Flaric's role, and yeah, I know you're excited to talk about your skill with throwing dice upon your own desk, right?
Yeah, I had 2 dice, 2 d10s to simulate the D100, and I rolled them, and it was good. I told people what the roll was.
Sorry, I phased out for a second there. I did want to just go back and note that the reason we added like this Genki system that Jake said to add a little bit of volatility is because we didn't want our simulation to end up with half the Rikshi at 8 and 7 and the other half at 7 and 8.
Exactly.
We wanted to guarantee high scores and guarantee low scores.
And give it a little more excitement.
I was just a huge fan of NBA Jam, and like you just on there, he's heating up like after a bunch of scores. I wanted that with my Rikshi.
Yeah, so we wanted and our tests that we ran before the actual full Basho simulation indicated that the amount of impact that we gave this Genki system gave a pretty solid indicator or a pretty solid result of the right number of people right around a record of 500 and the right amount of people that were doing great or doing terribly.
Yep. Yeah, I made sure that I tracked like on a per day basis. Okay, how many people have like 8 wins? How many people have 7 wins? Does that track with like previous Bashos and the amounts? And I mean, it differs greatly between Basho to Basho, but yeah, the numbers we got for our test and then the numbers we ended up getting for our actual simulation were right in line with what you would expect a real tournament. Like I could point out a real tournament that it was very close to.
Yeah, exactly. Like we kind of had. We didn't go so far as to graph it, but we wanted some sort of bell curve to be like a lot of the guys are pretty close to 500 and about the right number were far from 500. And it worked out. The Genki system helped Elo be more volatile to reflect that. Similar to our simulated Basho came within the bounds of normal for a Basho. And that is exactly what everything here was designed to be. We wanted it to be within the bounds of what could happen in real life.
Yeah. And so before we get back to Flaric's most important role, I do want to, I pulled up like our Genki sheet and just want to like call out some things. So Mitake Yumi won this Yusho. He had far and away the highest Genki score. And we'll talk about how we got this Genki score, but he ended up with a Genki score of 13. Keep in mind, it could only go up by 1 or 2 per day per like via a win. And so to end up with, he averaged +1 Genki for every match that he won because he ended up 13 and 2. The next highest Genki score after his score of 13 was Kodo Shogiku with 5. So he was 8 clear of the next highest guy. So that's a big reason why Mitake Yumi won the Yusho.
He was really Genki.
He was
super Genki.
So not only did he win the Yusho because he had the most, like his Elo score contributed to that. Yep. His head-to-head, the luck of the dice, everything contributed to this. And especially his luck on the Genki rolls that I'm going to talk about next. Those Genki rolls helped him get to that win percentage because for reference, 13 points of Genki versus somebody with 0 points of Genki. If you both had an Elo rating of 1,000, Mitake Yumi is getting a 13% boost. So that's like somebody of a rating 1,000 going against somebody with a 1,130. That's like an 85% win chance for the guy with 13 Genki points. That's a huge deal. So these Genki points, volatility is the word I keep coming back to, but it helped us get more streaky front runners and more streaky, whatever a nice word is for the people who do absolutely awful in a Basho.
Also incredible upsets.
Yeah. So like if you have a score of an 85% chance to win against somebody, 15% of the time you do get a big upset, and that's going to swing the Elo scores and probably the Genki scores. So yeah, it was a fun system that basically added a little bit more realistic streakiness to our calculation. So Flaric would roll the die. the dice, I guess, because you would roll 2 d10s to determine a number out of 100. So I can't remember what number I used. It was 65 point something, maybe. So if it's 65.3 and Fleric rolls a 65, that's an under. If he rolls a 64, obviously that's over. So that determines, or whatever the number comes up as. That is the match roll. That determines the winner. We record that.
So I do want to bring up a situation where like that distinction where if it's like 65.7, you say, and then 65 is the under for the winner if you roll 1 through 65, and then it's 66. So we had a matchup between Hakuho and Takada Fuji where the percentage roll was like 96 point something for Hakuho to win. And it was like 96.9. And then we rolled a 97. And Jake said, nope, that's a win for Takada Fuji. And I wanted to fight that so hard.
Oh, yeah. But that's so unlikely.
It's so unlikely.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's back-to-back losses for Hakuho. Now we got to like think about, do we pull Hakuho out? And it's just like, it's 96.9. We'll just call it 97. That's a Hakuho win. Then we don't have to worry about people yelling at us because Takada Fuji just got back-to-back Kinboshi.
Yeah. Because I was yelling at Ryan right there. I was like, what the hell? What happened?
I was like, holy crap, Takada Fuji won!
Yeah, like it's so unlikely. We can't pretend that it actually just happened.
Yeah.
But no, we had to respect the dice on that kind of stuff.
Respect the dice.
Yeah.
That was our rule.
Yeah, exactly. There's one thing, and I'll get to that shortly, but there's only one time that we compromised our principles a little bit, and that was regarding Monoese.
Oh, yeah.
But
Just that.
But let's get through the rest of like how we calculate a match based on the dice, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that. So that match roll determines the winner, but there are 2 more rolls that we got to do to flesh out everything that happens in this match, and that's the Kimarite roll and the consequence roll. Kimarite roll, a little bit more straightforward. We created tables based on the top 10 winning techniques and the top 10 losing techniques for every guy to create a table. Like, this is the table if wrestler A wins, and this is the table if wrestler B wins. And we'll roll 3 dice to get a number between 0 and 1,000 to determine which Kimarite it is. So the way that we did that, that data is available on Sumo DB, 5th member of the podcast, hashtag GSB bingo. You can cross that square off. But so what you can get data from there. And so basically what we did was like, I'm going to bring up Hakuho, for example. Hakuho has a list of matches, how many matches he has won, sorted by Kimarite. And his top ranked move that he wins by is Yorikiri. He's got 351 of those. So, and I'll take that data all the way down to the 10th ranked move that he has used, which is Okuridashi, which he's used 24 times. So based on the ratio of how often he uses each of those moves, we scale that up to a full 1,000 so that we can normalize it from wrestler to wrestler. But we also want to take in, how does the guy that Hakuho just beat, how does that guy usually lose? So for Onosho, for example, he's the one that we would always come back to. How does Onosho lose? Anybody?
Hataki Komi.
He overextends, he gets slapped down. Happens all the damn time. Slippy Otoshi, yeah. So we factored it in 2-1 in favor of the guy that wins. So if Hakuho beats Onosho, 2/3 of the time, we will select from a proportional list of Hakuho's winning techniques. What does he do? How does he often win? Because Hakuho's the one who wins, which means it's more likely he was in control of the match and deciding how it works, how the match functions. Like, does he go for the belt and therefore win by a belt technique or something like that? But 1/3 of the time, instead, we pick off what Onosho loses by, which obviously heavily weighted in favor of Hataki Komi, for example. But yeah, so that whole table, we had it calculate out into one table that we can roll 1 die between 0 and 1,000, and that tells us, boom, this is the technique that was
It's used. A very large die, the D1000.
Yes.
If I hadn't already said that it was 3 dice of a D10, then that joke would have landed a lot better. But yeah, so that was basically it for the Kimarite roll. And then we get to the consequence roll, which is a little bit more complicated and consequential.
Wow.
So since Jake kind of biffed that, I will take over on the consequence roll.
Yeah, you go ahead, Ryan.
So we wanted, this is where like the Genki system comes in, because we had the first roll that determines who wins the match straight up. It doesn't determine anything else. And then we needed to figure out, okay, was this like a tightly contested battle? Did like the person who won, did they really win? Do they feel good about how they did? Is that going to like give them confidence to carry over into the next day? Or did the person who lose, did they injure themselves? Did they tweak something? Is that going to linger on for the coming days so that they have a lower Genki score? So what we did, we had another D100 roll by Mr. Flerick, and how we set it up was just the higher the number, the better the winner did, to the mid-range, where if it was a middle number, then that's a mono-e, which triggered another roll completely, and then the lower the score, the worse the loser did. So for like a roll of 91 to 100, that got a +2 Genki score for the winner, 76 to 90 +1 Genki for the winner. And then the same thing on the bottom side, 11 to 25 is a -1 Genki for the loser, and 2 to 10 is a -2 Genki for the loser. And then if you got a roll of 1, that is a Kyujo for the loser, which
Equivalent of the headshot.
Yes. And we'll get more into Kyujo in a little bit. But we also had a roll of 49 to 51 would trigger a mono-e roll. And so that we just did a simple D6. We figured the decision's upheld most of the time. So we did 1 through 3. The decision's going to be held. If you roll a 4 or 5, the decision is going to be overturned. And if you roll a 6, it's going to be a Tori Naoshi. Just pretty simple there. We kind of started off with a 48 to 52 for the mono-e, and that was for I think the first 5 days is the first session that we
give or
sat
take
down and did.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of determined, that's too many mono-e's, and so we kind of
that was like 5% of the time you're gonna have mono-e, right?
Yeah,
an average of 1 a day, because there's about 21 matches a day. But at the same time, it seemed to come up a lot more often than that.
Yeah.
And this is the part I was mentioning earlier where like we kind of sacrificed our principles a little bit and just we had to stack the dice a little bit because it was happening all the time.
And I'm okay with this because this one wasn't supported by like actual numbers. We didn't figure out how often does a mono-e happen. So it was just kind of our gut feeling. And so because of the first few days experience, like our gut feeling is telling us this is too much. Let's rein it in. So I don't feel bad about changing those numbers partway through.
Yeah,
so
I only feel bad
to about 3%, right?
Yeah.
From 5 to 3.
And despite that, we still had the anomaly that was Kaisei.
Yes. Yes. Especially in those first 5 days, but it did continue where he had at least 4 or 5 matches that were mono-e, and he had that one match where it was mono-e, Tori Naoshi, mono-e, decision overturned.
That was Ishiura's match.
Yeah, Kaisei
That one,
versus
I think-
Ishiura.
we gave that one a full-on GSB award for the most ridiculous
Yeah.
most ridiculous shimpanning we'd ever seen.
Yeah. So yeah, that consequence roll is what we called it, is how we determined how that match went. And sometimes if it was like a 91 to a 100, that might turn an Oshidashi into an Oshitaoshi. Really dominated the guy, knocked him on his ass. But so that is how Takayumi ended up with his Genki score of 13, is because when he won his matches, Flerick would roll that D100 and it would usually be somewhere between 76 and 100 and would give Takayumi a lot of Genki points. So that one roll to determine if somebody was Kyujo, I know we rolled it once, but there are looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that have never pulled out of a tournament. And so we determined, hey, if it hasn't happened in history, we're not going to have it happen now. And so those guys are Takada Fuji, Tokushoryu, Tamawashi, Ikioi, Nishikigi, and Kodoeko. We said, hey, if they haven't pulled out up to now, we're going to say they're not going to pull out of this tournament, even if they roll a 1.
Yeah, it was based on like history of people who have never pulled out and who have been in pro sumo for a long time, like at least 9 years. I think
I think it was 10.
Yeah, it was 10 plus years and never pulled out.
Yeah, 10 years.
And so what actually happened was Tokushoryu on day like 13 or 14. It was just me and Flaric that were simulating on this day because at this point we had automated Jake's job completely out, and Mac
It was amazing.
Yeah, and Mac was busy with work, I believe. And so Flaric and I just we rolled that one for Tokushoryu. He's like, but we can't pull him out. And so I think we gave him like a -4 Genki score on that day.
But he like broke his foot, but he's like, I can pull through.
Yeah. The rest of the
walk it off.
Yeah. The rest of the Kyujos that we had weren't a result of like a Nat 1 roll. I think it was Teruno Fuji. He started off 0-7, and that was just sheer dumb luck. Like his Genki score only ever got to -1. So it wasn't like it was really bad. I think it was we set Juryo guys at a lower Elo score just because we don't track the data for a Juryo Rikshi, so we don't know exactly what their Elo score would be.
The way that works is I have a set value that based on it is based on some data, but like we don't track match to match for Juryo, but I do have the value that we set when a guy from Juryo comes up to Makuuchi. It is reasonably accurate to where those guys tend to perform.
Yeah.
But we had him set there. But yeah, I mean, if you flip enough coins enough times, eventually you flip 7 tails in a row.
Yeah,
and that's what happened to Teruno Fuji.
And with his history of injuries and him being a former Ozeki, we're like, he'd probably pull out at this point. Takakeisho was kind of the same thing, where we didn't roll like, now you have to go Kyujo. It was just kind of, he's lost 6 in a row. He's an Ozeki that just lost his rank. He's not going to stay in and fight anymore.
Yeah, and we took into consideration that he's Kadaban, which usually means that if there's a chance, they're going to kind of stick it out.
Yeah.
But I think as soon as he had a losing record, he was just like, nope, I need to take this Basho off.
And then there is Takayasu, who we actually had increased his chance for Kyujo at the start of the tournament. There were a few guys that we did this with where we would determine these guys go out a lot more often than other people. And I think Flaric did a lot more research into that and kind of set those numbers a little bit.
Yeah, I think I just looked at the last year in Bashos, tried to get some recent data of whether or not they actually went out, because I think that reflected kind of where they were at health-wise and injury-wise. And so we just kind of adjusted the Genki based on that. Like if they're coming in a little bit like injured, it was kind of the idea if they had some injuries in the past year.
Yeah, because I think we started off Takayasu at a negative Genki score based on that injury and also his chance for Kyujo. Everybody, except for like the 6 we mentioned, was just a standard 1%, except for like Takayasu. We had him 8% to go Kyujo, which maybe we should have done even higher based on his last injury.
But that was based on, so that percentage that you mentioned, that's based on history. Like about 1% of the time, the match loser will go Kyujo. So like that's where that percentage came from. But based on like an exponential formula that we wanted to give Takayasu, I can't remember the exact numbers, but we were like, we want him to pull out 50% of the time if he loses 8 matches, I think is where we started at.
Yeah.
But then we like did the algebra backwards and we decided, okay, that means that about 8% of the time that he loses, he should back out.
Yeah.
So like Takayasu is the obvious example. Tochinoshin, another kind of obvious example. The Yokozuna, very obvious example that of people who had elevated injury chances. But Kaisei kind of surprised me, but he has pulled out of a lot of tournaments recently, so we did give him an elevated chance too.
And Takakeisho as well. And so what happened with Takayasu's Kyujo is I think we rolled somewhere between a 1 and an 8 on day 13.
You rolled a 1.
Kyujo. Okay, so we did roll the 1
1
for Takayasu, and so that is what pulled him out on day 13, as we finally rolled that 1 on somebody where we would actually pull them out of the tournament.
I was just about to comment. That was the only one throughout the entire injury tracking system that rolled a 1 and said, yep, that scans. Kyujo, you're done.
Yeah. Got the automatic, and they weren't a never Kyujo like Ikioi.
Exactly.
And Tokushoryu, it's like, you're throwing my plan into whack.
But that wasn't the only way though. Like that, like I said before, that's the headshot Kyujo. That's like the one and done. Boom, you got an injury, you're done. Mm-hmm. But we also, Mac, elaborate on this here, but we also had an injury tracker where we we started kind of arbitrarily, but we had some way to determine where we would track day to day, like how much wear and tear is this match compared to the last one.
Right. So going off of our trademark Genki system, I built an arbitrary health modification to where we could see how, based on a Rikishi's performance, whether or not they would either improve or basically start to decline. So as you win, going off those positive Genki numbers, like, yeah, all right, I'm getting pumped up, I'm getting psyched up, have that additional confidence going into the next day. Versus, holy crap, I can't believe I whiffed. I got a Hitaki Komi. I tripped. I slipped. Or, just Shodai in his hot garbage. Those all affect your health negatively in that sense. But as the tournament goes on, your health kind of builds on top of it. So what you basically had was, if you were an average Rikishi, so in this case, the most average based off my numbers was Daisho. So Daisho, with the combination of his wins and losses, actually equated out to the starting arbitrary number was 25 for the health. And by the end of the tournament, he ended with about 20.8, which is good. That's the sign of a very well-performing. He finished 8-7, still finished really decent for him, got his Kachikoshi, and he didn't drop below 20. So in that case, he's still feeling good. He's not injured. He's probably going to do well going into Nagoya, so we'll see what happens with that in the next tournament. But it's not relevant at all in this case.
Well, I mean, the number itself, when we say arbitrary, we mean like 25 or whatever, like that. We started with kind of an arbitrary number, but like the way that we used this tracker was, if everybody is declining as the wear and tear is building up, let's say like the average goes from 25 down to like, 20 health at day 10 or something like that. But at day 10, if the average is 20 and this one guy has had so many poor consequence rolls that he's at like 3, then we have to reevaluate, does that guy pull out? Is this a big enough deal that this guy should pull out? If it's Ikioi, no. If it's Takayasu,
exactly. Maybe. Ikioi and Tokushoryu both threw off my entire system here. I didn't account for zombification.
Yeah, but like Takakeisho, I believe he was one of these guys where it was like his injury tracker number has gotten so low relative to everyone else's, and he has no reason to stay in because he was Kadoban and has 8 losses. It was something that kind of helped us flavor the discussion into who stays in and who pulls out, right?
Same, yeah, exactly. Same with Kakuryu. Kakuryu was another one to where he was doing well initially. He had a couple losses here and there, but still wasn't doing too terrible, and then had 3 losses right away. 2 of them were catastrophic, and then that dropped him enough in the health down to the single digits on day 12 to where we said, nope, he's out. I mean, he's got his Kachikoshi, but he's down in the single digits on day 12. He's done.
Exactly. So we made sure that this injury tracker system that started arbitrary, but we used it in a relative fashion. Like how does one wrestler compare to the average? That, in addition to like the situation for each guy individually, after each day of matches, we would discuss: does anybody need to pull out? Is this guy's situation so bad that he would quit? Like Hakuho, if either Yokozuna lost 3 days in a row, we'd be like, nah, screw it, they're done. I don't hear Ryan. Do you guys hear Ryan?
No, I don't hear Ryan at all.
Yeah, I assume he had nothing important to say.
Sorry, I was looking at the video chat and I saw that Ryan was talking, so I stopped.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was like, Ryan?
My dog had started barking, as she is wont to do, and so I muted myself, and then I forgot that I muted myself. No, what I was saying is we had multiple conversations multiple times for each of the Yokozuna on whether or not to pull them, because they both suffered some early losses and then like back-to-back losses. Ended up like with Hakuho, his Genki score ended up like 2, and like his injury was never really bad. So even though he was losing more than Hakuho usually would, was like, we're not seeing an injury, so we're just going to keep him in there. Whereas like Max said, Kakuryu, he kind of weathered the storm with those first couple of losses, but the second round of losses that he sustained, it kind of triggered some injury flags, and so we ended up pulling him out at that point.
Yeah. So what I want to talk about next, now that we've talked about like how do we decide who faces off against who, and we've talked about how do we determine how that match goes, the next thing to talk about is what did we do between one day and the next day. So obviously Ryan would work on the Torikumi based on who wins and who loses.
I would practice throwing some dice over and over again.
Fleric would stretch out his elbow just to make sure that he was fresh.
Mhm.
We would update all of our programs, which as we went on, we got better and better at figuring out when the load times would take effect so that we could plan accordingly and save as much loading as possible for between days when we already have a loading time.
Yeah,
but yeah,
there was a lot of dice actually being thrown because like how many matches are in a whole entire day?
21.
Yeah, if
21,
everybody stays in
That's
for a full
42.
tournament, it's 315 total matches for a tournament.
So we throw one die to see who wins. We throw one die to see how they won by Kimarite, and then we threw one die to see the consequence. And on average, one a day, we would throw a D6 to see how that Mono-E went.
Yep. It added up pretty fast. Like these days were kind of taking some time. So we would look to optimize it as much as we can.
Exactly. You were icing your elbow by day 9, I think.
Oh yeah. Lots of ice.
But yeah, so like between days, like we would talk about, we would talk about like who needs to face off against who when we get to the later days where it's based on record, based on the Yusha race, blah, blah, blah. We would talk about who needs to pull out, why do they need to pull out, all these different factors that we have at play. Where's the injury tracker say that this guy should be? All these different things come into play for us to decide, all right, we're going to write the next day's Torikumi. Do we need to get anybody out of there? Do we need to bump anybody up in their level of competition? And all this would come into play for creating the next day's lineup of matches before we go back to the top and start rolling more dice. So this includes updating their ELO scores, which was a pain in the butt for us to wait on Google Sheets to do for us. This included updating the Genki so that next time we plugged a certain guy into a match, he would get his appropriate boosts, etc. So that we would do in between each day. And so we would generally do like we started with like 5 days at a time, I think. And then by the time that got more complicated, we would shorten it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did days 1 through 5, and then we did like days 6 through 9, and my brain was fried from creating Torikumi at that point, and so we did not do a full 5 days in that second session like we planned. And then we just kind of like piecemealed it together the rest of the point. We'd do a day
when people were free.
A couple of days here.
Kind of
and
mostly ended up being me and Fleric at the end because we had the most availability at that time. Right. And as we've said, Fleric completely automated Jake's role.
Oh, just gorgeous. I'm so happy.
Yeah. Well, as soon as I had to do more than like rolling dice, I was like, no, I'm not having it.
No,
we're done.
So
no.
If you've ever seen the meme of like, there's a graph of like productivity versus time. And there's one curve for a normal person, and their productivity increases linearly over time. But if you have a lazy person or a programmer, their productivity is 0 for a while, and then their productivity is immediately infinite because they coded their job.
I have not heard that before, but that's hilarious.
That is who you are. Fleric, I have seen you in meme form, and it is this meme.
I feel seen.
If you can program, a computer to do your job, it's okay to be at 0 productivity for a while because then your productivity becomes infinite. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, by the time it kind of fell apart a little bit as far as like scheduling things because we were able to work our way ahead of schedule to release daily updates ahead of time. We have 5 days in the bank ready to go before day 1 of the tournament even happens. And then boom, we got 5 more days. Oh, we're so ahead of this. And then it kind of like, oh my God, who's free today? We got to do some stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that went on, but every day we would do the every day of the tournament, we would do all these calculations, we'd do all these rolls. Ryan would update the Torikumi, and we'd go back to the top. But as we went, we made sure to record the results in a fashion that we could release them day to day. So even if we do 5 days in one go, we're not releasing 5 days in one go. So we have spreadsheets with hilariously too many tabs because we wanted to make sure that we could release results So for day 3, even though by the time that day 3 comes out, we already have 5 days calculated, we wanted to be able to release the charts. Like, what does the Bansuke look like at day 3? What does each individual wrestler's record look like at 3 days? All those things. So we would save it as we go, and then we would release the appropriate thing at the appropriate time. And we would the other main thing that we would do here is we coordinated with some guys that deserve special shout outs. In particular, Bruce from Tachiai released the recaps every single day.
He might have had the most time-consuming job of all of us.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So Bruce, we would send him results. Like our code output is the winner, the Kimarite, and like whether there's a Genki or a Mono-ii or whatever for this match.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else special about this match according to the data? And then he would take that. He would take his knowledge and his research of individual wrestlers and be like, okay, so if this guy wins by this technique, then it probably would have started like this, blah, blah, blah. He'd go into the all the way in depth to writing like a full paragraph for every match that never happened.
The painstaking analysis.
Exactly.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like he would do all sorts of research and put this into a simultaneous release where we release all the data that the computer did for us, plus the Torikumi for the next day that Ryan has done. And then Bruce would go in there and do something completely unautomatable and write like, how does this look? Like, what if I were to watch this match, how would I summarize it in a paragraph? And that I'm super grateful that he was willing to do that. I felt bad for him as it went on and it got more difficult because there were more days to do. And there's just so much work piling up and it's tough, but like, he did volunteer before we started to do it for every day.
You have only yourself to blame, Bruce.
Yes, exactly. Bruce is there's no one but Bruce to blame for signing up for 300 or so paragraphs of matches. But yeah, so we would coordinate.
Yeah, that's how much we were all missing Sumo at this point.
Yes.
And we should also point out that we kind of coordinated with Bruce prior to finishing up the simulation. We had conversations like, hey, this is what we've got. Like, what do you think? And he's kind of the one that gave us the idea for like that Genki system to kind of determine like the volatility and stuff like that.
Right.
So
add a little randomness to it.
Yeah. So Bruce did help out a little bit with a little bit of the nuts and bolts of how the simulation results would happen as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Special thanks to everybody at Tachiai. Bruce in particular for several conference calls that we did with him. Ryan's Bansuke and Torikumi Guru. Leonid helped us out with a ton of stuff. Just the whole team over there helped us out a ton. And I don't want to turn this section into just gushing over everyone who helped us, but like this is the point where we're talking about what we delivered. Like what did we put on the internet for people to see day to day after we did the simulation? And so much of that is based on the help that we got from people that are more experienced with sumo than we are.
All the good stuff that was delivered was not by us. All we did was post some screenshots on Twitter. The actual write-up was by Tachiai. The videos were by Conrad Metcalf, user on Reddit, who just took it upon himself to put those videos together.
That's a legend.
Awesome.
That's great.
All I did was take screenshots of my computer and post them on Twitter.
Yeah.
The four of us did dance annoyingly.
I was about to say, let's not forget JWags.
Yeah, for sure.
At one point on Conrad Metcalf, my favorite thing was once he got to, like, before a while, like, we had some people who never faced off against each other with this Bansuke because we had some people at record high ranks. And so, but sometimes when they faced off against each other, there was like no video footage we can use. But later on, the Basho, he was actually able to animate kind of like little pictures versus pictures. And that was my favorite thing. I was like, yes, this is great.
Yeah, so that was hilarious.
Huge props to you for making that happen. That was fantastic.
Yeah. So we coordinated with all these other people to help us put together a fun product to help us bridge the gap until July's Not-So Basho.
Yes.
And it's going to remain Not Goya. If we have to simulate it, it will be Not-Goya. That still works, like Not-So worked for Natsu. But it still works if it happens in real life, because Nagoya is not happening in Nagoya. It's Tokyo. So it's still going to be Not-Goya.
Oh man, look at that branding.
Aptly named. Aptly named.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the Kyushu Basho that happens in the Kyushu region of Japan, Nagoya is named for the place it happens in. It's not named for the season. It's not named for, like every other, the other 4 bashas, the 3 Tokyo and the Osaka, I think, are all named for the season they take place in.
New Year,
so it doesn't matter where
spring,
they happen.
Summer. No, New
Yeah.
Year, winter, summer, fall.
I don't care.
I don't think there's a. Yeah, it's like Hatsu is first, Haru is spring, Natsu is summer, Nagoya is Nagoya, Aki is fall, and then Kyushu is Kyushu.
Yep.
Right.
Boom, right there.
So-
well done.
Yeah.
Well done, Flair. Much better than Ryan's job of this. But but yeah, not Nagoya and Kyushu make no damn sense if they don't happen where they happen. So like,
Yeah, I remember like when I first started Sumo, those two confused me the most. It was like, what is a Kyushu? Is this like some festival? What's going on?
No.
yeah,
it's
when we
just
were
in
learning,
Kyushu.
yeah, we were learning numbers, and it's like Hatsu. Oh, okay, all right. So now that one makes sense.
Yeah.
These other 3, there's seasons. Oh, son of a bitch! What? Oh, these don't make any sense.
Why?
Nagoya. But yeah, so we'll see what happens there. I mean, if it was happening in the United States, we would obviously absolutely be planning to cancel another one. but Japan seems to be handling things with, the tact and grace of things that are not the United States. So it's very likely that it will still actually happen, but probably like March with no fans.
So the latest that I have heard from Twitter is that they are allowing Heias to do like matchups between their Rikshi, like full contact matchups. They are not going to allow inter-Heia matchups before the tournament happens, which people have noted. Like people like Ichinojo, who is the only Sekitori in his stable, he's not going to have anybody good or at his level to face off against prior to the Basho. So his training might take a hit a little bit there. But I also heard rumors that they might try to find a way to get some fans in the stand. So it seems like they're pretty full ahead on this Nagoya Basho happening. And they said the only reason they canceled Natsu is because there was a state of emergency and they couldn't go against the government like that. There currently isn't a state of emergency in Japan, so I fully expect Nagoya to happen, which I really hope it does, because if it's canceled, I will fully commit to simulating another tournament. I don't know that Bruce will. I don't know that the other 3 people here would do it.
I was going to say,
I
I
would
don't know.
totally
I can
commit
do
to
that.
doing it again.
Hey, like we said, I'm happy to do it because my job is automated now. But yeah, I hate that this is a political statement, but 500,000 dead people. We should definitely take it seriously. And if things get worse in Japan in the next few weeks before the tournament is supposed to start, sacrificing another tournament of sumo is not the same as sacrificing lives of human beings. So, well,
Yep.
I'm happy.
At the end of the day, it's just like big people pushing each other, like trying to, like,
Yeah.
it's not of like the least important. It's like just not important. It just
Exactly.
Unless you're undead like Ikioi. Ikioi is the undead.
And he needs his monthly or Basho-ly ration of souls to feed on in order to stay animated as the living dead. But yeah, I mean, like, obviously when it all comes down to it, I don't think there are too many people that are going to argue that like lives and sports are the same thing here. But regardless, yeah, I'm ready for sports to happen again.
Please come back. We miss
We
you.
got baseball and basketball scheduled to come back at the end of July. We're going to have sumo in our lives on the 19th. Hopefully the NFL season will go forward. Hopefully the college season will go forward.
Football.
the Premier
Football.
League is the Premier League is back, and I don't know if you guys have heard, but Liverpool FC has won the Premier League. Simultaneously, the fastest and also the latest in the year because of the break they took. So yeah,
That's a good point, Flair. Liverpool is the best, aren't they?
Probably the best team in the world.
Yeah, I would say so.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly better than every single other team because they all suck.
Yeah.
I don't care enough about soccer anymore to really get tilted by any of this.
You've tried to care, but
I tried for like 1 year to care about soccer, but I just couldn't do it. I'm really into League of Legends now, though.
LCS, baby.
Heck yeah.
LCS.
Yeah, so the summer
Yeah.
split is on, and that's all virtual, so there's no chance that that's going away. So if you're into esports, League of Legends, LCS summer split. Well, I guess all the leagues summer split right now, but we mostly follow the North American one. This is
Hey,
a
Ryan.
Sumo podcast, right?
Hey, Ryan, who's your favorite LCS team?
Team Liquid.
Go to hell. You're the worst. I hate you. TSM, FTW,
Ooh.
What does TSM stand for, Jake?
Team Solo Mid.
Damn
Yeah,
it.
you thought you could with a gotcha.
I
Screw
thought I
you.
was going to get you with the gotcha.
Yeah, what does Team Liquid mean?
Gelling, baby. The
Team
gelling.
Liquid. Yeah.
yeah.
It means
Boom.
4-time champs. That's what it means.
Yeah,
Cloud9, baby. Cloud9.
son of a bitch.
So I think we've clearly reached the end of explaining how
We've derailed. We've derailed far enough.
We ran out of content, so now it's just devolved into bitching at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask you guys, like, what was your favorite part of doing the simulation, and what was your or not what was your least favorite part, but what would you change on the next one? I know this is springing it on you, but Jake, why don't you tell us what was your favorite part of the simulation? What would you change for the next one?
My favorite part was absolutely taking the numbers that we had and trying to line them up and compare them with history. My absolute favorite part of this was not just coming up with formulas to simulate like what should the win percentage be, but also like the comparison to trying to make it realistic, not trying to make it like we're not saying that Mitakayumi is our pick to win the next Basho necessarily, but Mitakayumi winning the Basho, absolutely within the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And being within the bounds of normal and making sure our formulas had a result like that, that was my favorite part. The thing that I would change about next time is more of that. I would do the thing I like more times. I would gather data on how often do mono-ees happen, how often do Torinaoshis happen of those mono-ees, that kind of thing. Getting more data to get to have a better confidence that we're within the realm of normal, that's what I would do different.
More tabs.
All right.
More tabs on the spreadsheets.
I will not be satisfied until we reach 100 tabs.
What about you, Mac? What was your favorite part? What would you change?
My favorite part was actually being able to simulate the randomness, like looking at Takayasu, looking at his Kimboshis, looking at how unlikely of a scenario that would be for him to actually get it, and then rolling the dice, having fate determine it, dice roll, and having it come true. Like, that's amazing. Same with Takara Fuji. I love that we were able to bring in that randomness and simulate those awesome Kinboshis that everybody just goes nuts for. Now, we couldn't throw cushions, but it is the way it is.
I tried.
Throw my desk chair here, but I have to pay for the damages. The only thing I would change is, honestly, if we could help you more with the Torikumi, Ryan. I know that was really painstaking for you, and if there's a way that we could actually make that a little faster, that way you didn't get burned out as easily, that to me would be worth looking into.
Yeah, I would say my favorite part, was putting together the Torikumi on a daily basis, because I enjoy it's a lot the same as why I enjoy doing the Bansuke. It's very similar, digging into something, finding the patterns, putting it together, and that's something that I'm going to track for the actual Basho whenever it takes place. Nagoya, Aki, Kyushu, whenever this Bansuke is put into effect, that's something I'm going to track, is like how accurate was my predicted Torikumi, especially at the top of the Bansuke. I know it's going to be a mess at the bottom that I completely missed, but that's something I really want to track, is just kind of see how many matches I accurately predicted. Kyujo and stuff is going to affect that, but I think for the most part, it'd be pretty interesting to see how well I did. I'll report back to you guys on the review for that. I'm going to keep track of that. Thing that I would change, I think Jake kind of hit on it, is just the main thing that, like we said when we were going through this, the Mono-E stuff was just kind of, one a day feels about right. I want to drill into, no, this is the exact amount of times to expect a Mono-E. This is the exact amount of times to expect the decision to be upheld. All of that stuff. So that's what I would change. What about you, Flarek?
I think my favorite part was when it was kind of all coming together, and we started kind of see these cool patterns of where when you have someone that was kind of out in the lead for a very long time, like when Ishiura was like looking like he was going to win the whole entire thing, and like we're kind of getting behind, like, yeah, Ishiura, he might be the one. Like, he's kind of been kicking butt. He doesn't have to face Hakuho. But then, like, it kind of naturally with the way the Banzuke kind of matches people up, that just kind of corrects itself. It was kind of cool seeing the whole like sumo system, how it kind of interacts and kind of makes it kind of how a basho normally goes. That was kind of vague, but like the matchmaking of where towards the end where they tried to get good matchups, it kind of gets someone usually outside of the pack doing pretty well. And it was kind of cool to see the whole simulation kind of following that, which I thought was cool. And what I alluded to before is like the places where like it kind of met reality are just kind of really funny. Like Ikioi kind of getting really, really injured. Like on the back end, like he was pretty much dead.
Yeah,
but then he still gets a couple wins.
Yeah, so what happened with Ikioi was he had a day one matchup with Tamawashi, and Tamawashi won the match, and based on our Kimarite roll, it was a Kotenage. And we had said, like, one of our rules, okay, if Tamawashi wins by Kotenage, we're going to kind of increase the likelihood of Kyujo. And so it was like, if you roll like a 1 through 10 or something like that, that guy might go Kyujo, just for like the lulls of, haha, Tamawashi Kotenage somebody else out. And then it just happened like Ikioi lost to Tamawashi by Kotenage on day one, and then he rolled between 1 and 10. So we just tanked his we couldn't pull him out, so we tanked his Genki score.
He was negative hell. He was negative all the way through.
Yeah. Which is something we've seen in a couple bashos of where he's just kind of barely holding together, like with tape, and like you feel like he wants, like he should go Kyujo, but like his pride as a sumo, like an old school sumotori, is like, no, I'm not going to go injuring unless I lose a leg or something. I'm going to stick it out.
And like I mentioned before, there was only one time where I feel we even debatably compromised our integrity, and that's where we kind of like recalculated how mono-E's work.
Yeah.
The Ikioi thing, 100% by the dice.
Yes.
There was zero fudging it, where Tamawashi beats an apparently invincible human being by Kotenage. Like I desperately wanted that not to happen, but like the one thing that we decided was very likely to injure somebody, it happened immediately.
Yeah, there were a couple of times where I really wanted us to change the result of the dice. The one I talked about with like Hakuho and Takeda Fuji is like, no, Hakuho wins this match. Or I know when Ishiura had a 2-match lead after day 9, I'm like, come on, Ishiura's got to lose one of these. But,
yeah, what do we gotta fudge to make this realistic?
But I'm very proud that what the die said happened, and we did not. I can promise everybody we did not fudge a single thing there. All of these results are 100% based on the dice, based on the probability that we set.
Yes, very much so. And yeah, I'm also very happy about that too. And like just the kind of cool things that came out because of that. Some of it,
Absolutely.
like stuff like we haven't 100% seen before, but that's just kind of sumo,
That's
like,
going to happen every tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so I just enjoyed seeing that stuff, and it kind of gave me a little bit of a high of where, like, maybe not a high, but it gave me a reminder of like how it felt during sumo tournaments and kind of seeing
this
these
could
people
happen.
doing well.
This could actually happen.
Yeah.
Like the Ishiura Kaisei match. It's like, like that would be the thing where it was like 2 years from now. Hey, remember that time that there was a mono-E, a Torino Oshi, and then another mono-E?
Yeah.
Like, there's one thing that's like silly that it's like, oh, it was the tournament where that stupid thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Are any of you guys going to have a really tough time ignoring the results of this simulation when thinking what's going to happen for the next tournament? Because in my head, Takakeisho's a Sekiwake. He is not an Ozeki anymore. And like telling myself, he has 3 Yusho now.
I'm telling myself no, but that I'm just lying to myself at this point.
Yeah. It's going to be really tough for me to like. I think the next Basho is going to happen before I accept that our results aren't like an actual Basho that happened.
Yeah, the way that you remember sports trivia, like this is going to be in there in your head forever. Like you won't be able to not remember that Mitakeumi only has 2 Yusho.
Yeah. And that, I think, actually, no, my favorite part of this simulation isn't going to come until the review when we go through and see what we got right and what we got wrong. I think that's, and I know a lot of fans are really looking forward to that as well.
And one thing, I have to mention this one time, but the way that statistics work, our Basho is not saying, like, it's not the same as saying that we, as 4 sumo experts in bunny quotes, of course.
No. No quotes needed. 4 sumo
You're
experts.
Right. As the foremost sumo experts on planet Earth.
Who has won a sumo trivia? This podcast has won a sumo trivia night. Speaking of sumo trivia, there is a sumo trivia coming up on July 9th at 8 o'clock Central Time, put on by the U.S. Sumo Federation.
July 9th? Incorrect, sir. Incorrect.
July 1st. Sorry, July 1st. Wednesday, July 1st. That is coming up very soon. So it's $5.50 to take part. It is a kind of like a charity event for U.S. Sumo Foundation. Take part in that, and you will compete against the 4 members of the GSB crew, and you will see if you know more about sumo than me, the defending Sumo Night Trivia Champion.
Man, you better hope that I edit and release this one in time.
I kind of did this to force you to.
Damn it!
Oh.
But no, what I was going to say though was the 4 most prestigious, well-regarded sumo experts on the planet Earth, and dare I say in the solar system.
Yeah.
I like it.
What we're not saying that our Basho means that we predict Mitakeumi to win, or that we predict
until the prediction part of our preview episode, though.
But we're not like the way that statistics work and the way that our formulations work. We're not saying specifically that we think Mitakeumi is going to get 13-2. We're not specifically saying that Ishiura is going to have a 2-match lead by day 8 or something like that. We're saying that like we created estimated likelihoods of certain things happening, and so we believe based on what we created that each of the results that happened are within the realm of realism for what actually is going to happen. So Mitakeumi winning 13 matches in the Yusho wouldn't necessarily be a drop-dead shocker to us, of course.
Because it's already happened.
Because it's already happened.
No, but like in real life, it's already happened. His first Yusho, he won 13-2.
Oh, son of a bitch, you're right. But it's not the same as us saying that we think that's going to happen this tournament, because there are other factors that come into play, and there's also the randomness of statistics, the randomness of chance based on statistics, even if we believe our predictions, our match-by-match estimations were correct. So I'm looking forward for the first time that Mitakeumi pulls out on day 3 or something like that, and somebody says, GSB sucks, they thought he'd win the Yusho. That would be... I'm looking forward to that Twitter argument, I guess is what I'm saying.
Your simulation was
Jake
crap,
loves a good.
It was a simulation.
Jake loves a good Twitter argument.
Oh, yeah. No, 1v1 me IRL, okay?
Yeah.
I'll come at you. I will describe statistics to you, man.
All right, so it sounds like we are ready to wrap up this episode. But before we do that, there is just one thing I noticed on the Genki chart that I have in front of me. So as we mentioned, Mitakeumi, positive 13 Genki points, 13-2 record. Kodo Shogaku, positive 5, 10-5. Sadano Umi, positive 4, 11-4. Kiribayama, positive 4, 6-9. He was 1 match better than Ikioi, who was negative 9 in the Genki score.
Yeah.
So even with all of the odds in Kiribayama's favor, that still goes to show that sometimes the dice just hate you.
Yeah. The gods frowned upon Kiribayama.
Yes. But with that being said, we will wrap up this podcast. So if you enjoy the GSB podcast, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast listening service.
You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Grand Sumo Breakdown.
GrandSumoBreakdown.wordpress.com is our blog where you can find full results of the entire Not-So Basho.
If you have any questions, comments, or corrections, drop us a line at grandsumobreakdown@gmail.com or give us a call at 805-613-7866. That's 805-613-SUMO.
The Not Goya Basho, if it does go forward as planned, will begin on Sunday, July 19th. We got a preview episode that'll come out the week before that, and we might be able to sneak in a bonus episode before then. We'll knock around a couple ideas, see if we want to do that. Might as well. But until that hypothetical bonus episode or the preview episode, we will see you later.
Go TSM.
No, Team Liquid. Damn it, Jake can edit this.
What do you do when they can't make sumo? You get your friends together and you fake some sumo. Hey, 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 hey. It's the Not-So Basho. Not-So Basho, Basho, yeah, yeah. Not-So Basho. Not-So Basho, yeah.